Can and should the Dolphins take their lumps with the Tua Tagovailoa contract all in 2026? We are exploring that $99 million question here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. I want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. You're on the Locked On Network. Special thank you to each and every one of you who have helped to make the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. ESPN, I blame you for us having this conversation. Somewhere in the ethos of programming yesterday, and the Dolphins obviously had the introductory press conference for Jeff Hafley and Jon-Eric Sullivan. ESPN, I guess their panel with NFL Live talks about Tua Tagovailoa. And the questions asked, should the Dolphins just rip the Band-Aid all the way off and take the $99 million cap charge for Tua Tagovailoa and move on as a non-post-June 1st designated cut, all in 2026. And I am here for ripping this Band-Aid off. But there are many parts of an offseason strategy to approach resetting your salary cap books. And a big piece of that puzzle is you have to cut payroll, not just cap, because payroll and cash is usually deferred into future years and creates future years of salary cap debt that you have to cut off at the source, right? Like I have to stop paying just one player as an example. I got to not pay Bradley Chubb another $20 million this year, right? Because we're probably not going to carry Bradley Chubb on the roster for a $31 million cap charge. Like even when he restructured his contract last year and he cut his salary in half to stay on the team, you know what they did? They took the vast majority of that, they put it in a bonus and they spread it out across 5 years of cap to bring his cap number down so they could get salary cap compliant. I think the Dolphins need to move on from Tua Tagovailoa, and I would do so as a post-June 1st cut. And the reason I would do so as a post-June 1st cut, I'll start with this first as we talk about the elephant in the room, right? It's fitting wordplay. Alabama Crimson Tide, the mascot's an elephant. The Dolphins with the presser yesterday, and Jeff Hafley talking with Cam Wolfe had an awesome 6-minute sit-down interview either before or afterwards, I assume afterwards. And Cam posted on Twitter this morning, and they talked about like traits he's looking for at a quarterback. And we're going to talk about that at one point on today's show. But like the elephant in the room is like Tua is still here for now, right? Jeff Darlington reported yesterday the Dolphins understand what it's going to cost. They are prepared to move on from Tua Tagovailoa this offseason. The Dolphins are at, depending on where you look, somewhere between $23 and $25 million over the cap right now, with Tua on the books at a $56.4 million cap charge. If that number goes to 99.2, you are guaranteeing that you have to take maximum savings with every other big contract player on the roster just to get salary cap compliant. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is as close to a mathematic impossibility as you can have based on the deferments from past years for names like Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb. And they did it with Minkah Fitzpatrick last summer when he got there, and they reworked his contract and moved money up from 26 to 25. Austin Jackson, Zach Sealer. They restructured Jordan Brooks and Aaron Brewer. Those guys have deferments of cap. James Daniels. Zach Wilson has a $3.8 million void cap charge this year to sign a 1-year, $6 million deal last year because they had to put four void years on the back end of the deal to minimize the cap hit so they can afford him because of their cap situation. Okay? All of these names, all these contracts, if you do the thing with Tua and you just get it all out, the $54 million is a fixed expense this year. You're going to pay it no matter what. You don't have to pay Bradley Chubb. You don't have to pay Minkah Fitzpatrick. You don't have to pay Austin Jackson. These guys don't have guaranteed money anymore. And that's the part, for me, you have to cut the cash. You have to cut the deferment at the top. And if you were to just take the $99 million cap charge for Tua Tagovailoa, right? You're going to lose another $45.2 million in cap space. Let's pretend they do it. It sends them to, I'm going to use Spot Track's numbers, about $66.5 million over the cap. Let's say you move on from Tyreek Hill. You release him, and you could save $22 million. Now you're at $43 million over the cap. Your maximum pathway to savings for Bradley Chubb is not to cut him, but it's to restructure him. You get another $7 million to restructure him and max it out by converting his salary. You only get $7 million in savings because you've restructured him 3 times over already. So that's going to put you to 35 over the cap to move on from Bradley Chubb as your next biggest cap charge after Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa. Like, you mathematically can't do it. So you got to chase the maximum savings, which is to commit to paying Bradley Chubb, whatever else he's owed, whether that's you restructure him and he's $10 million, or if he's going to stay on the books at the contract that he had, whatever. Okay. The pathway to maximizing your cap savings with Bradley Chubb would be to restructure his contract, not to cut him. And that's guaranteed. It's locking you into, you're going to keep Bradley Chubb on the roster for another year if you move all of the Tua cap out in one hit to make yourself feel better about not deferring $43 million of it to 2026. But if you do the post-June 1st with Tua, you know what you can do? You can move on from Bradley Chubb if you want. You can move on from Tyreek Hill, no questions asked. You can move on from Austin Jackson or James Daniels or Minkah Fitzpatrick, or if you want to, or Alec Ingold and Jason Sanders and Nick Westbrook-Akine. You can move on from all these other guys. But if you take all the dead cap and you just dump it into Tua, your pursuit of just getting compliant, never mind having enough to forget free agency, you got to have a rookie pool. You got to have cap space to sign rookies. And the Dolphins draft picks that they have right now, it's about $8 million in cap space that you need just to sign the rookies for that you have on the roster. You got to have $5 million for a practice squad throughout the course of the year. So you got to stack those expenses. It's another $13 million in cap space that you need to have just to operate. What happens if somebody gets hurt? You got to put them on IR. You got to sign somebody else. You got to have cap space to do that throughout the course of the year. You probably need, even if you're not going to sign anybody above minimum salary players, you got to have like a $12 million cushion going into the season. Plus, you got to have $8 million to sign the rookies for the draft picks that you have right now at your disposal. So you're talking about you need $20 million just to operate if you don't sign anybody. We're going to put all in for Tua just to make ourselves feel better and clear that, while simultaneously meaning we're locking ourselves in for more cash expenses for other players and not being able to move on from those contracts and not only preventing, but doubling down on the cap deferments of that cash that those players are owed. And it's not like you could sit here and trade Jalen Waddle. You know, you lose $12 million if you trade Jalen Waddle versus what he's on the books for. Because the most attractive part about it was that you got that contract done early so you could take the cash and spread it out across 2 more years because he had his 4th and his 5th year of his rookie contract, plus the 3 years of the contract that he signed. Jalen Waddle's on the books next year for $11.6 million in cap space. You trade him, it's 23. You lose $12 million. You can't do it. Never say never. But this is as close to a mathematic impossibility as you can possibly have. And I just want to stress that, because I don't want you to be disappointed if the Dolphins post June 1st Tua Tagovailoa. Mathematically, they almost have to, just to operate, not even to sign like a bunch of players, but just to have operating space. And it flies in the face of the cash is the more important part of this calculus. And the 50-something million you owe Tua, sorry, it's a fixed expense no matter what. But if you take that lump, you're signing yourself up to pay more in cash to other players you'd ideally move on from and restructure them down to get compliant, and you're making the future year cap outlook even worse anyway. Because you can move on from Bradley Chubb this year and save 7.5. But if you restructure them down to get that $31 million cap charge down because you all in get out of Tua with the $99 million all in one hit, you know what's going to happen? You're going to save less money next year against the cap to move on from Bradley Chubb than you would save this year against the cap. And if you do that with Chubb and Minka and Austin Jackson and James Daniels and Jason Sanders or Alec Ingold or whoever else, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And doubling the cap charge for Tua this year, all that does is ensure you're not clearing cap charges from other players and they're getting paid and staying. And you're going to take harder lumps with all of those other contracts next year. Can't do it. Not as I see it. Not as I see it. Now, we have a lot more to get to here on the show. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in. We're right back. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can get your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and get you every deduction that they possibly can. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file your taxes last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate. Get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. If you're a Dolphins fan like me, you've probably experienced this. You drop more than $100 on parking at Hard Rock Stadium. You battle the traffic getting in and then sit in your car for an hour trying to leave. But what if I told you there was a better way? Found this new app that I think could help you out. Dibs is a platform that connects you with verified homeowners and businesses near the stadium who rent out their driveways and lots on game day. We're talking about spots as low as $25. It's up to 80% cheaper than stadium parking, and you'll get in and out way faster. Every host is verified and rated, so you know exactly what you're getting. Dibs is available for games and events at Hard Rock Stadium, and it is expanding across the state of Florida. Call Dibs on your spot today. Use code LOCKEDON20 for 20% off of your first booking. The Joe Rose Show had an interview with Jeff Hafley, and was awesome interview. Cannot recommend it enough. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but I want to start segment 2, block 2 here on today's show, focusing on the Jeff Hafley, Cam Wolfe interview in which they talked about kind of the wish list of a quarterback. Again, Cam posted this on Twitter, so if you didn't catch it there, cannot recommend it enough. It's 6 minutes long. But I did want to read the quote that Jeff Hafley had about a quarterback and what he wants, right? Because you have this elephant in the room with the Tua situation, and you know they're handling it the right way. Well, they're non-committal to any individual pathway, trying to pay respect to the player, but they are getting asked questions about the quarterback situation because everybody who followed the team last year saw how that story ended, right? And you're still getting reports like from Jeff Darlington yesterday, and these reports were coming out as early as November, that the Dolphins were going to move on. And I think you could probably put on your thinking caps and ask, if the Dolphins, that was leaking out in November and it's still leaking out now, well, how if the power structure just got in place, how would that decision have been made? Or how would that have been getting out, right? I'll let you use your thinking caps on that piece of it. But here's what Jeff Hafley told Cam Wolfe he's looking for in a quarterback. I want a winner. I want a guy who's got it mentally, he's got it physically, he's got it up here in his head, and he's got it in his heart. And I want a guy who can walk into a room and everybody says that's our quarterback. I want a guy who's one of the first ones in the building, is just going to love ball, live ball, and grind. And that's what GM Jon-Eric Sullivan is about to do, I guess. So we'll find out there. We'll see in the quarterback situation. Obviously, everything going on here. There's good players here. I'm excited to meet them and see where we're at. We give our answer, and then kind of the consideration to those in the building is sure to follow, because you want to pay those guys a professional courtesy as guys that were holdovers, that weren't a part of your coaching staff or your regime, and bringing them in. And you do want to connect with your players. But all the writing on the wall continues to say that there's going to be this transition. And I think that is kind of the unwritten part about the quarterbacks, is we scout quarterbacks and we look at the arm strength and we look at their athleticism and this and that. But it really is, it reminds me of the Any Given Sunday Al Pacino, like rah-rah moment with Jamie Foxx's character, Willie Beeman, right? And he's talking about the belief that a quarterback instills in his team and how important that is. You're not some flash in the pan wide receiver. You're a quarterback, right? It's Al Pacino. I can hear his voice right now. And I think there is truth to that, right? The belief that comes from that position and that player. And I think, when Mike McDaniel first got to Miami, it certainly felt like that piece of Tua Tagovailoa was brought to life. And it's certainly helped by the win against Buffalo with the big post down the field to Jalen Waddle to split the safeties to set up a win. It's helped by the comeback against the Ravens early in that season. And then all of the yardage and production and the points and being top 3 in scoring offense in 2023. And then it just kind of, it faded, right? And by the end, you certainly felt like that belief had gone. And I think there's lessons to be had about like the physical traits, that if you're going to have a player with limitations, then you got to be able to make up for it in X, Y, and Z. And then there's got to be like a durability element of it that you got to be able to rely on. And you can apply all kinds of hindsight 2020 kind of stuff. But for me, a lot of this messaging from this regime already is not about a physical measurable. It's about evaluating the football character and the football IQ and the leadership and kind of the intrinsic, what are you intrinsically driven by? And I think about like just to use a close to home example that I think everybody will probably recognize. Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? Came out of Wyoming, no Division I offers, was a late bloomer, off the beaten path, gets drafted in the first round based off the physical ability, but he was a late bloomer. And, that kind of created that drive to kind of develop and get better as a player, right? And some guys, it's Kurt Warner, right? Locked on Dolphins alumni, Kurt Warner, right? But he's a very different skill set than Josh Allen, but he was bagging groceries. And Tom Brady is another close to home AFC East example. And that was Kurt was bagging groceries before he got his shot and played in the AFL and then made the leap. Tom Brady, it was the chip on the shoulder from all the people that passed him over and the way that he worked, yada, yada. And that's the art of the player evaluation that anybody can flip on your tape and watch and see physically what you're capable of and what you do and don't do. But that's the part that I think is going to be the defining variable for success or failure, right? Because every outcome is on the table. This could go any which way. And I don't want to be presumptive. I like what I hear, right? And a lot of people, their response is, that's great, but show me, right? And I get that. They'll have a chance to show you, but unfortunately we can't hit sim to draft or sim to start of next season or sim the offseason, right? To start the measuring. So for now, I appreciate the insight and I appreciate the awareness that football, like everything else, is also a people business. Now, there are some rare cats out there with the physical ability that have the trump card in their back pocket with anybody that they play against. But finding those and capturing lightning in a bottle with those it's a bit of a treat, and it's not something that you can bank on, right? So I think this group feels properly calibrated in my mind to go about business of player acquisition and team building in a way in which is different than what they have pursued, which is the scheme guys. We want the scheme. I want this guy. I want that guy. Well, when the scheme guy comes in and he butts head with everybody and can't get along with his players, and the only coach quarterback relationship he's ever seen is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and he treats his rookie quarterback like that, it goes off the rails. Or when the scheme guy comes in and he's too laid back, but he wants the top end talent, and then they come in and they walk all over him. It's the people parts. That's the point that I've tried to echo, and some people hear parts of it, but they don't hear the whole point. The whole point is the Dolphins have been coming up short in the people component for different reasons. Now, this group is the overcorrection that you always get. They're highly attuned to the people elements. I believe in the body of work that Jon-Eric Sullivan has had during his 2 decades in Green Bay. This coach is highly attuned to the people element of the business. Now they have to go out and they have to follow through, and simultaneously they have to put a good staff around Jeff Hafley to develop those people that they're prioritizing to become the football players they need them to be to win games. More on that thought next. Make sure you guys stick with us. NFL season is in full swing. There's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, the cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium just hits different, right? The frustrating part for getting tickets in the stadium, though, is getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. There's a hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You could get tickets up on the Game Time app, find NFL tickets for as cheap as $100. There's all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees when you put the ticket in your cart. And with the Game Time guarantee, you have real peace of mind with your purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action right now. Every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets you like most. And I love the fact that they don't force you to play something different. You can pick the bets you like the most. Every play feels bigger. The boosts make your bets feel that way too. Make your picks, apply your profit boosts, go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs are rolling through. So visit FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. I am going to lift another quote. This one from Jeff Hafley's interview with the Joe Rowe Show, which happened, if you're listening on Odyssey, it was at the 22-minute mark of the hour 2 block of the Joe Rowe Show up on Odyssey. Joe, thank you for the interview. I would like to think that I've provided enough contributions to the Joe Rowe Show the last couple of years that we've become very good friends that I'm just going to read this one quote because again, it's a glimpse into the things that were probably a part of the discussion on what was broken with the team and how you find a coach to go about to fix it. Right? RIP the Dolphins Country Club. It's a great place to come. It's later in your career, come on down. They don't work you too hard. They don't practice too many reps. They don't practice too hard. Culture soft, yada, yada. Different rules for different players. You've heard all of the narratives, right? They were all very prevalent this time last year through the joint practices last year in which the Dolphins got smoked by the Bears and they got smoked by the Lions in joint practices. It was about 8 months of culture bad talk with the Dolphins, right? Here's what Jeff Hafley had to say about his coaching approach. Who I am and how I treat players is not going to change. I'm going to pour into these guys. I'm a guy who coaches hard. So call me a player's coach. Call me what you want. I'm not really sure what that means at times because different people use it for different ways. But here is what I am. I'm going to have really good relationships with these guys. I'm going to get to know their families. I'm going to get to know them. And then I'm going to push them. I'm going to hold them accountable. I'm going to be hard on them. Practice is going to be tougher. And I'm going to do everything I can to make these guys better. That's why I'm here. They may not like some of the things that I say, or they may not like some of the things that I ask them to do. But ultimately, if they want to get better, they're going to listen. That is how I coach. That's how I've coached defense. And now that I'm the head coach, it's just going to be the entire team. Very easy to hear a quote like that. Apply it to your consumption experience the last 24 months, call it 12 months, call it 8 months, like however long of the Dolphins. Hear a quote like that and try to not immediately apply it to the things that have been the negative stigmas around the Dolphins. Right? Darren Waller comes out of retirement. Oh, great fit for the Dolphins, right? He could practice on Fridays and then play in the games. Oh, so-and-so didn't practice all week long, but is going to play in the game and dress in the game and be good to go. But that pairs right up with what Jon-Eric Sullivan talked about as far as kind of the psychology of a team and how they practice and why they practice the way that they practice. And all of that is fueled by the kind of team and the kind of roster you put together. Right. The other interesting part that Jeff Hafley had is he talked about rules, and it was very simple. He said, here's the rules. If you break them, there's consequences. And if you're show up on time and you're prepared for your job, everything's going to be great. And if not, you probably won't be here long. Love it. All right. Application, give it time. There has to be follow through. But if a coach is going to sit here and preach accountability, I remember 2 specific shows that we did throughout the course of the year last year where I remember asking after a game in which massive mistakes were made, whether it was from coaching and the same mistakes being made over and over again, or with players who were making repeated large mistakes multiple weeks in a row and still just being trotted out there to play. I remember on those shows in season, like being hot on the post-game stuff and asking, where is the accountability? Coach is preaching accountability. So it's another insight into diagnosing problems and what went into the decision for who to hire to try to fix them. And it makes perfect sense, right? Now, there are other blind spots that can exist with this pathway that they've chosen. We'll see what they choose to do about it. That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I'll be down in Mobile, Alabama next week for the Senior Bowl, so keep yourself plugged in. Give you some updates on some draft prospects. Looking forward to it. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in. I'll talk to you all again soon. Fins up.